No, I think it was chemistry that was my best. But anyways, welcome back to Metastic Days. Today we're going to talk about the biology SAT subject test. I'm going to give you a basic idea, the types of questions, the topic breakdown, what you should really know, and tips to getting an 800, as well as example questions we'll go through along the way. So, there's multiple choice questions on this test. There's 5 choices, A to E. You're going to have negative marking on this test. So if you get a question wrong, you're going to lose negative 1.25 marks. Because first of all, you answered the question, which is worth 1 mark, and then you answered it wrong. So you lose another 0.25. So if you have 4 questions and you guess 2 of them, you get 2 of them right. But the ones you guessed were both wrong, you're going to get 1.5 out of 4 marks. So just don't guess. It's better to get a 2 out of 4 than a 1.5 out of 4, okay? So don't guess, only 20% chance of getting it right. So when you're guessing, just the biggest tip is to really come down to 2 or 3 options. If you're having to guess between 2 or 3 options, then guess. But other than that, not worth the pain, okay? Not worth the pain. Now, let's talk about the question. You're gonna have a point scale of 200 to 800. You're gonna have an hour to do this test, and you're gonna have 80 multiple choice questions. Now, you're probably not gonna get through all of them, but try to get as many done as possible. It's all about practice and how well and fast you're able to answer those questions. Calculator is not permitted. I know you don't really need a calculator much in biology, but just ideally have some mental math skills to take care of, I think, the populations and ecology part of it, because there's like a little tiny bit of math, just very little bit. Problem solving requires simple numerical calculations, so it's not crazy numbers you got to deal with. You don't have to divide 548 by 18 or stuff like that. It's very simple calculations, but make sure to have your mental math skills there. You're gonna need them. Measurements are expressed in metric system. Okay. Now for this biology subject test, 60 questions are questions that everyone is gonna have to do. But there are the last 40 questions you're gonna have to choose between E or M. E stands for ecology, and M stands for molecular biology. Okay? So you're gonna have to choose if you want to do biology E or M. And I think after 60 to like 80 is E, and then 80 to 100 is M. Okay? So you're gonna have to just do any of those 20 questions. You have a choice, right? M is harder, E is easier. So I mean, you choose which one you want to do. Do you want to go the hard way or the easy way? I would just tell you to do for the last 20 questions, just do biology E, even if you're good at biology M, because biology M is just really tough and you have very little time to go through all those nitty-gritty questions that are lab-based or that give you a situation. I mean, you don't have that much time, so it's better to go with the easier option. So that's what I would recommend. There are 3 types of multiple choice questions. So you're gonna have part A to the test, part B, and part C. So you're gonna have ones that are easy and memory based, and I'll show you how those look like. Ones that are medium, they have like I, and I as in the options. So like you'll have to choose which one is true or which one is false. It's like which one is true, only I is true, or only I and I is true. Like you're gonna have those types of questions, and you're gonna have basic numerical questions, multiple choice questions with 5 options. And then the part C, these are the hardest questions, lab/diagram based questions. So you might have a lab situation or a huge diagram. So these are the ones that take the longest. I really suggest you make sure all your easy questions are right. You want to make sure those are right. You don't want to lose dumb marks in those. So please, these are the easiest questions. It's all memory based. Make sure to know your answers to these questions. And if you don't attempt it, okay? Now, let's say this is an example of an easy question, I think. Yeah, this is an example. Okay, so the easy questions, the way they work is they'll tell you answer questions 5 to 9, and they'll give you a bunch of like options and then a bunch of statements. The only statement I've given here is 1, but essentially you're gonna have a lot of statements, like good 5 statements, and you're just gonna have to match which one, which one is true for which one, right? So responsible for synthesizing proteins, and essentially they're like the statements are basically properties or either a definition of these specific words, and these are going to be words basically, and you're just going to have to know them. That's it. That's all. If you know them, you know them. You know the answer right off the bat. There's no thinking involved in this. So responsible for synthesizing proteins. We all know that's ribosomes, so the answer to that is A. So this is a normal, I guess, medium level sort of question. Normal multiple choice question. A tapeworm in the intestine of a human. What does that even mean? So a tapeworm, we all know that's very parasitic. That's parasitism, because the tapeworm really takes over the intestine of a human. It is not something that is beneficial for them. It attacks them. So easy answer, parasitism. I don't want to go too much into the biology of all these questions. I just want to give you example questions. Some of these are very easy, and then some of them get really tough. Like, this is also memory based, but it's a medium level question. Like I told you, they'll give you 1, 2, 3. You have I. So they'll ask you, which of the following contains blood poor in oxygen? So basically, which one of these have poor levels of oxygen? And the answer is E, the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. So these have low levels of oxygen. Okay? So these are also fact-based. By the way, you're going to have to know, for the circulatory system, you're going to have to know the whole pathway of blood. And you have to know which one has oxygen and which one doesn't. Which one has blood poor in oxygen and which one has blood high in oxygen, right? So you're going to have to know those little nitty-gritty things about the heart. Just a little tip. It always comes. The heart always comes on the SAT. Consider the following graph of a substrate concentration versus product formation. Assume enzyme concentration to be constant. Why does the graph level off at high substrate concentration? This is more of a lab type of questions where they give you a diagram and they'll give you a graph and they'll ask you a question about it. And you'll have 5 options to choose from. These are usually the hardest type questions. So you have all the enzyme is used up and product formation cannot occur without it. So the enzyme is not used up here. There is no more substrate to be converted into a product. Now you still have more substrate to be converted into a product. Substrate concentration exceeds enzyme concentration and all active states are saturated. Maybe, we don't know yet. The reaction has run to completion. It hasn't necessarily run to completion because it's still going. It's just on a stable state. An inhibitor has been added. There's nothing to show here that an inhibitor has been added. So I got this off of cracksat.net, and they have a bunch of like tests on there, like SAT type questions, and they also give you a really nice explanation. So when the concentration of substrate far exceeds the concentration of enzyme, remember the question states that enzyme concentration is assumed to be constant. So enzyme concentration is constant. All the enzyme active states, so basically the enzyme can't essentially the enzyme can't exceed the substrate because they say the enzyme is constant. And all the enzyme active sites are saturated with substrate and the product is being formed at its maximum rate. The only way to increase product formation at this point is to increase the concentration of the enzyme. Note that enzymes should not be used up in the course of a reaction, so A is wrong. Furthermore, product formation is still occurring, just at a stable rate. So B and D are also wrong. There is no reason to assume an inhibitor has been added. The rate of the product formation remains constant. Therefore, the answer is C. Okay, so let's talk about a specialized ecology question because I told you have ecology and microbiology. So this is a basic, simple ecology question. Which biome contains maple, squirrels, and black bears? You're just gonna have to know this and memorize all these different biomes, and it's E, deciduous forest. I actually learned this in grade 10 biology. It was like an ecology unit and they talked about all these biomes. So you're probably familiar with this. Okay, this is more of like a hard, I guess, medium sort of level of ecology question. They'll give you like a situation, they'll ask you a question about it, just like they do in part C of the test where it's like lab based and diagram type of questions. 6 pairs of bald eagles were released into the wild in Indiana. 4 of the pairs of birds are successfully nested and raised young. 2 of the pairs nested near an industrial complex that released waste products, PCBs, into a nearby lake. These birds laid eggs, but the embryos failed to develop. The egg shells of the embryos that failed to develop were tasted and were found to contain more PCBs than the nearby plants and insects. This is due to... Now, this is actually a clear example of biomagnification. And if you're able to identify biomagnification in a situation, it's really helpful because they do ask these types of questions. And I know, like, if you were guessing this question, you'd be like, let me just choose the longest answer or the one that makes the most sense. But the answer to this is actually biomagnification. And that's because biomagnification is essentially food web interactions happen, and in that, if let's say an insect eats this plant and this plant has PCBs in it, the insects will have more PCBs than the plant because they ate the plant, and it just builds up. And let's say something eats the insect, and it'll just keep building this waste product up. And this is what biomagnification is. So as you go up the food chain, you're gonna get more of this. You're just gonna get a lot of the waste product in the laid eggs or whatever. So let's talk about prep books after we've gone through some example questions. So you're gonna have I have my top books. I know there's a lot of others out there. I've tried Kaplan too. I went through a bunch of prep books really to see what would help me the most. So Princeton Review and Barron's. So Princeton Review is like my top choice because they have amazing explanations. And when I was actually doing the Princeton Review, I took a lot of notes for biology and I did like very colorful notes, and I highlighted things and I made them really like, bright and colorful. And the reason why I did that is because biology is very memory based. And when you write notes, you're essentially able to retain the information better. So you'll better be able to remember everything if you write it down, And if you put colors into it, you're more likely to remember it because those colors will probably stay in your brain. And it's just a cool memory trick. And you understand concepts better when you write them down. So that's why I did a lot of note taking for biology. Even for the concepts I knew, just because it would give me a nice summary. Because biology is one of those things we can forget. There's a lot of details, so it's really good to take notes. And Princeton Review is great. Plus, they have very nice drills at the end of each little topic, and they've divided the topics up really well. Now the Barron's is harder. So the Barron's kind of tests you above the test level. Like the Barron's is harder than the actual SAT subject test, so it over prepares you. And that's why most people use it, because they want to be over prepared for the test. I don't really find it necessary, but they do have a really good SAT subject test questions on there that are harder. And it's great practice for you. And if you understand the content in the Barron's and you want to read that and you really want to go in deep into like a topic, then for sure do that. I just don't find it necessary to learn more than you need to learn for a test, right? So, and all the other thing with Princeton Review is it's very close to the actual SAT subject test, as I found it because I've done the bio one twice. And the Princeton Review has a very good idea of like questions, like how the questions are really like put together on the SAT subject test. And you definitely need to have the College Board SAT Biology E/M subject test prep book. You're gonna have 2 tests in this. You're gonna have detailed answer explanations and exclusive time-taking tips. So there's some nice tips in here. You're gonna have a lot of questions, and you want to do these ideally a week before the test or 2 weeks at max, because this will give you a very, 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 very real idea of how you're gonna do on the actual test, because these are real tests. And I found this to be super effective at helping me understand the test. But these are also like really nice side ones. Now for Kaplan, like I did do the practice test in it, but the book was just a little hard to understand for me. And that's why I opted with Princeton, because it was just very easy to understand. But you can definitely do the practice test in Kaplan, McGraw-Hill, because the more practice tests, the better you're gonna get at everything. Now online, you're gonna have cracksat.net. I've mentioned this in my chemistry SAT subject test video too, and my math level 2. So if you want to watch those, go on my channel and watch those videos. Those are very, very nice videos to watch too. So cracksat.net. So essentially, this is an online website with a bunch of SAT practice questions for each subject test, and I found this to be super helpful for the topics that I struggled with. They also have the full versions, but they have like topic-based sort of questions too, and I find that super helpful because if there's a topic I'm struggling with, I can easily do the tests for those and like keep practicing. And there was also a summary of biology on there on Cracksat, and I'll show you that summary because I think it's cool. It's cool to have that. Maybe you could look over this before the test. So it's definitely very detailed. So this is, I think, a great resource to have. I'll link it in the description below, but just something cool out there, right? So now let's talk about the topic breakdown. So cellular and molecular biology. Obviously, you're going to have more about the cell and molecular biology in the molecular test because the last 20 questions are specialized for molecular biology. So you have 15% in the ecology test and then 27% in the microbiology version of the test. It's not that the whole test is different, it's just the last 20 questions. Ecology, you're going to have more of it in the if you choose biology E and less in biology M. Genetics 15% versus 20%, 25% versus 25%. So the organismal biology, that's about organs, yay, the heart, the lungs, everything. It's just quarter. It's pretty much the same. Evolution and diversity, you're gonna have more of it in ecology because that relates to ecology, and less in microbiology. So see this divide? Let's really look at this divide in detail because I know how important it is to look at things in detail. So their website has very nice information. They also have practice questions online on their website, the College Board. You can actually start practicing stuff like that, but they're just not as many. So that's why it's not enough, but it's definitely something you can opt for and you can try. So go under topics of the test. And so you're going to look at what comes into cellular and molecular biology. So you're going to have the cell structure, vacuoles, chloroplast. You're going to have to know all of that. Organization. You're going to need to know mitosis and meiosis. You're going to need to know both of them because they're both very, very important. They're going to ask you about anaphase, metaphase, all of that stuff. And they're going to ask you about anaphase 2, metaphase. They might even have like very easy questions on there that are related to mitosis and meiosis. Photosynthesis, cellular respiration, enzymes, biosynthesis, biological chemistry. So like the question on the enzyme, the graph, they'll usually always give a question on enzyme and it'll always have some sort of a graph or a diagram for it, and they'll ask you about substrate and active site. Like I've seen it in so many practice tests that at this point I just find it like funny that they put this one in every single test. So for ecology, you're looking at energy flow, nutrient cycles, populations, communities, ecosystems, biomes, conservation biology, biodiversity, effects of human intervention. This is basically all of ecology. You're going to have to know energy flow, and I need to know all about biomass and where the energy is the highest, where it's lowest. You're going to have to know nutrient cycles. You're going to have to know nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle. You just have to know all of those cycles. You're going to need to know about populations, pioneer communities, climax communities, different ecosystems, biomes. They always ask about biomes. Conservation biology, biodiversity, effects of human intervention. You're going to need to know parasitism, mutualism, all those nitty-gritty ecology concepts. You're going to need to know those if you're doing biology E, especially if you're doing biology E. For genetics, meiosis, you're going to need to know like the law of independent assortment and the other law that Mendel, I think it's Gregor Mendel. Yeah, that dude, his genetic inheritance patterns, molecular genetics, and population genetics. So you're going to have to know how to do Punnett squares. And you're also going to need to know like the epistasis. I think that comes up a little sometimes it comes up on the SAT. Obviously it's not that often throughout the SAT, like it's only 15% of the test, but it's good to know your Mendelian genetics. It's very important to know. Organismal biology, so that just looks development of organs. I think this also includes like the reproductive system and the development of a baby through different trimesters, and you're gonna have to know like I've always seen these questions where they ask about like the mesoderm and ectoderm and endoderm, and they'll ask you like which organs are a part of the ectoderm, and they'll give you like a bunch of options like heart, nails, and like stuff. And you're gonna have to choose which one. So make sure to know your mesoderm, ectoderm, and endoderm because they're important. Like what type of like body parts they actually cover. So it's important to know that. And obviously you're gonna have to know your heart, know your kidneys, know all of those organs, everything. and even know the reproductive system, although it doesn't come as often. It might come, might not, but it's good to know. Or evolution and diversity. So here you're talking about origin of life, human evolution, speciation, classification. What was that dude's name again? Yeah, Charles Darwin. Know him. There are some scientists you're gonna have to know because of their particular experiments and like contributions to like diversity and evolution. So make sure to know them and make sure to know the difference between them. Even like survival of the fittest, they always ask questions about survival of the fittest. So know that very well. So here is the topic breakdown in detail. Let's go back to the presentation. We have one more slide left, and as you were gonna expect, I'm gonna talk about how to get an 800. So I mentioned this in every one of my SAT prep videos, and it's to use prep books efficiently to learn topics you struggle with or don't know. Like I said, write notes, highlight them, color them, draw diagrams, do whatever you need to do to help you remember your biology terms really well, because biology is all about definitions and all about memorization, okay? So use your prep books efficiently to learn the topics you struggle with, because the prep books actually have a lot of cool tips and tricks you can use on the SAT, and I find that super helpful. They have some cool memory tricks on there, and they give you the exact information that comes on the SAT subject test. So they're very particular about what topics they cover in those prep books. So if you're looking at the prep book and you know every topic in there, know you're pretty well prepared. Now, practice tests. Without practicing, you will never do good on a standardized test. This is a standardized test, meaning it has certain specific questions, right? And the SAT subject tests are very predictable, so they sometimes even copy paste questions out there. They often do that actually, and they'll change like one word in it or something like that. So if you do the actual College Board test, you might actually see the same question pop up. I've actually had this happen to me like twice, both times when I did the SAT subject test. So it's a very common phenomena. Make flashcards with concepts you don't know and questions you get wrong. Look over them every day until the day of the test. Like I said, biology is all about memorizing, so you're gonna need to make flashcards. If you're a flashcard person, buy 1,000 flashcards and just rate them. Like, just do whatever you can to memorize everything, basically. If you're one of those flashcard people, I know not everyone is a flashcard person. Some people are notes. Some people are more like they draw and they make diagrams and they make like mind maps and whatnot. And some people just love flashcards, so whatever helps you. But I find that flashcards are really helpful with concepts you don't know. And you can just write them down and try memorizing them and look over them every day. And questions you get wrong, don't just read over like the textbook, the prep book explanation, because chances are that won't help. Like, you're just gonna read it and you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But once you come to that question again, you're actually gonna forget the answer. You're gonna be like, oh my god, I remember reading the explanation for this. Why was it wrong? And you might answer it the same way you did the first time, and you make the same mistake over and over again. And I did that so many times. I made the same mistake over and over again on questions. So please write them on flashcards and look over them and know why you got the question wrong. Understand it. This is a standardized test. You need to know the questions really well. Know your formulas and be able to manipulate them. There's very few for biology. So point number 4, I use this more for like the math and the chemistry SAT subject test, but it's definitely helpful to know your basic formulas. I know there's one related to population, and I think it's like about alleles, and like I forgot the concept, but it has like the r squared p squared, like it's a formula. I forgot the name of it. So just know your formulas and know how to manipulate them. The prep books have really cool tricks on how you can get to the answer really fast, and I find that really helpful. So look at the prep books, especially Princeton has really nice cute little tricks up on a sleeve, you know. And then lastly, memorize facts, definitions. Now I know there's cool memory tricks on YouTube for all of this type of stuff, but you do need to know things like cell structure, circulation throughout the heart, your ribosomes, your like carbohydrates, proteins, and you just need to know those little properties about them, like the 1-to-1 ratio for like carbohydrates, I believe, right? think it's for carbohydrates. And know your the cellular respiration, know your photosynthesis, know what's needed for photosynthesis, know your light-dependent reaction and your light-independent reaction. Know all of them. Know your Kelvin cycle. And just memorize these little definitions like ribosomes, vacuole. Even knowing certain scientists, it's important to know what experiments they did and what was their purpose of experiment, or what was like basically the response they got out of their experiment. It's good to know some scientists as well, especially for ecology. They're gonna come in handy. And just keep practicing. There's no other tip I can give you other than keep practicing at least 3 weeks prior to the SAT. And practice is the one thing that'll really get you to that 800. It's really not about understanding concepts. It's about how well you're able to answer questions in an hour. It's about your ability to take that hour and make it something super effective where you can answer, let's say, like 70 questions and you answer them right. Like it's really about doing that. It's really about answering fast and answering right, because you need to have the questions right. So that's important. And that's it for the biology SAT. That sums up all my advice, all my tips. Just keep practicing and you'll get there. So that's it. Make sure to watch my videos on the chemistry SAT subject test and biology the math SAT subject test level 2, because that's what I did. I only talk about the subject tests I actually did because I know I have experience with them and I can give super helpful tips or things that I did that were just not good, that I shouldn't have done when I was studying for them. So some of them I've done twice. Biology is one of them. So if you have time, do them twice. It's not harmful. It's not like the test is going to change much next time. So it's just good to do them as many times as you can and try to get whatever mark you get. Like, just try to get a good mark, okay? So it's really about where you're on the point scale from the 200 to 800. And it's really not that hard to get a good mark on these subject tests. So if you memorize the techniques, and you follow the tips I give you, you will get a good grade on it. You just need to have a little bit of self-discipline to teach yourself some of the concepts you don't know, in case you're not part of the American curriculum. Even if you are part of the American curriculum, there are some concepts on the SAT subject test that sometimes show up that you haven't really learned in school. So, like for chemistry, colligative properties is one of them that I hadn't learned. And for biology, there were also some concepts that I hadn't learned. So I don't know, like the plant parts. Like, I remember that was something in grade 9 and I had totally forgotten it. So you have to know like parts of the plant, like the stem and like the petal and like the anther and the filament. You're gonna have to also know that stuff. And I didn't know it, right? So I had to really relearn those concepts by myself and memorize everything else along with it. So that was it for Biology SAT subject test. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like, comment, share this video, and press the bell notification so you know every time I upload a new video. And I upload new videos often now. I'm pretty consistent, so let's get this rolling, you know. And I have also a cool blog, a cool Instagram page with a lot of information, and a cool blog with good SAT subject test prep tips, right? So things that have helped me. So make sure to visit my blog and follow me on Instagram too. Thank you for watching. See you next time on Matastic Days. Have a great day.